Politics. I'm Catherine Cullen. Vashi is away today. We've been listening to Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland address the detainment of former diplomat Michael KOVRIG. The CBC's Evan Dyer is here with me to discuss what we just heard. You were part of that technical briefing earlier today, Evan. The minister covered a lot of ground there. I do want to highlight something very interesting that came up, which is the prospect, I think we should say, that a second Canadian finds themselves in a difficult situation. She referenced somebody who had reached out to Foreign Affairs. They haven't been able to contact that individual. So a lot of questions around what that might mean. No specific suggestion that this individual is being detained, but a lot of other ground there too. What stood out for you?
Well, on that issue of the second potential detainee, I'm interested to learn more about how that person was able to contact Canadian authorities. That sort of suggests they're not in the same kind of incommunicado detention, at least at that point when they made that contact. She said that they were concerned about the questions they were being asked. Yes. Does that mean they had not yet been arrested and sort of swept away? So I'm very curious to hear about that person's situation. It sounds slightly different from Michael KOVRIG's. She also made a point of the Attorney General having a veto after the judicial process is over, and then went on to make that very interesting comment about our extradition partner. It's not only about China. We also hope that our extradition partner will use the extradition process in ways to, I think she said, to further justice and the rule of law. Why would you say that? Well, obviously because the leader of our extradition partner, President Donald J. Trump, has been out there suggesting that he might want to use Meng Wanzhou as a bargaining chip in his trade talks with China, which completely undermines the rule of law arguments that Canada has made. And of course, even if we follow due process in this country and then return her under that existing extradition treaty to the United States, and the United States were to use her in that way, I'm not saying it would, this may just be President Trump talking, and Canadian officials have been careful to distinguish between his words and the independent judiciary that exists in the United States still. But if that were to happen, then that would completely undermine everything that Canada does to try to appear above board. Yeah,
we're going to drill down on that question of Donald Trump's comments, the extradition process with an expert in just a moment. But I also want to talk about the question of travel advisories. That's something the minister was asked about today. What did you make of that?
Well, certainly they're leaving leaving it very open for it to be changed. Right now, there's 4 levels. It's at the second level. Exercise a high degree of caution, I think, is the standard short form. The next one after that is avoid non-essential travel. If indeed another Canadian has been picked up, if it's a person who is perhaps an executive, because that would be a kind of a tit-for-tat role when you look at the person who's being held in Canada, one might expect to see that warning raised. But raising it preemptively, of course, is another escalation with China, and Canada may be keen not to go that way. But yeah, I think we have to watch, and if we see more arrests, I would be expecting that, as in the U.S., where apparently there's also some talk of putting out a more severe travel advice, we might see the same thing happen.
Yeah, obviously there's some very careful language being used in all of this, but I thought it was noteworthy that the minister did say, well, Canadians should keep looking at our website. Yeah. Certainly she's not closing the door to changing the status. Really, yeah, a remarkable set of circumstances. Anything else you want to add, Evan?
There's an awful lot of Canadians in China. An awful lot of Canadians do business in China. You have to think, looking back, the Chinese, there's 2 things going on in China, I think, that are both important. The government is angry, but also the people are angry. And we've heard talk from Canadian officials in the technical briefing about the appeals to the government of Canada to keep a lid on that situation. They talk about threats on social media and emails that the embassy has been receiving. And there's precedent for this. If you remember when the Chinese embassy in Belgrade was destroyed during the Yugoslav war, the Chinese government allowed very violent protests for days targeting the U.S. embassy. It was surrounded by tens of thousands of people throwing rocks, and the Chinese government, which of course can prevent protests the moment it wants to, let that happen, and it talked about the righteous patriotic anger of the people. We're in a similar situation here where the Chinese government is using and encouraging the feelings of anger and nationalism among its own people, and that could be a potentially very dangerous situation for any Canadian in China, including diplomats.
Okay. The CBC's Evan Dyer. Thank you.